Today will be part 27 to this series, Scriptures Often Ignored. And today we're going to be talking about the parable of the true vine and the branches. And we're going to be seeing exactly what this parable is really talking about. And so we're here in Yahuchanan, or John chapter 15, and we're going to be reading the entire chapter together so we can get a better understanding and see exactly what this passage is talking about. This is Yahusha HaMashiach, the Messiah speaking, and because this is a truth network, we use the restored set-apart Hebrew names for our Father Yahuwah and his true Son, the Messiah, Yahusha. And it even says that I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. And this part is very important, and we're going to see why it's so important later on in the second to come. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine. No more can ye, except ye abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. And so the question we should be thinking about, well then how can you abide in the Mashiach Yahusha? How can we abide in him to bring forth good fruit? Let's keep going. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what ye will, and it shall be done unto you. Oh, so it says in verse 7, if ye abide in me, and my words abide in you. Well, which words is he talking about? Let's keep going. Verse 8, herein is my Father esteemed, that ye bear much fruit, so shall ye be my Talmidim, or disciples. As the Father hath loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love. If you keep my commandments, also it talks about keeping the commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. So how can we abide in the love of the Mashiach Yahusha? By keeping the commandments, by keeping his commandments. Let's keep going. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. And we know that joy is one of the fruits of the Ruach that's spoken of in Galatim, or Galatians chapter 5. Now, verse 12 goes on to say that this is my commandment, that ye love one another as I have loved you. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. And notice how it says for his friends. Ye are my friends if ye do whatsoever I command you. Notice how it says you are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you. Well, what does the Mashiach Yahusha command us to do? Let's keep going. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his master doeth, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father I have made known unto you. Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you, that ye should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, that ye love one another. Then it goes on to talk about persecution as well. If the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you. And it's talking about how the world hates the real Messiah, Yahusha. If ye were of the world would love his own. But because ye are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, or if they have persecuted me, Salakia, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. But all these things will they do unto you for my name's sake, because they know not him that sent me. Verse 22 goes on to say, if I had not come and spoken unto them, they had not had sin. But now they have no cloak for their sin. He that hateth me hateth my Father also. If I had not done among them the works which none other man did, they had not had sin. But now have they both seen and hated both me and my Father. But this cometh to pass, that the word might be fulfilled that is written in their law, they hated me without a cause. But when the Comforter is come, whom I will send unto you from the Father, even the Ruach or Spirit of truth, which proceedeth from the Father, he shall testify of me, and ye shall also bear witness, because ye have been with me from the beginning. And we know in Tehillim, or Psalms chapter 119 verses 142, that the law, the word of our Father, is truth. His law is truth. His word is true. And we're going to be going over more of that in just a second to come. Because I cannot stress enough how important the word of our Father is. I cannot stress enough how important keeping the law, statutes, and commandments of our Father is. And for those of you who continue to think that the law is done away with and we no longer have to follow the law, we no longer have to keep the law, statutes, and commandments because the Messiah nailed them to the cross, even though the real Messiah was not nailed to the cross but was actually hung on a tree, and there's actual scriptures to back that up as well. If you continue to think that, I'm telling you, be deceived no more, because even John chapter 15 verses 10, even in this parable, Yahusha himself even says that if you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. Which commandments do you think he's talking about? And so when it talks about the true vine and the branches, well, in order to be part of that, in order to be part of the branches in the Messiah, Yahusha, you have to be doing the will and work of him, which is the will and work of his Father, which is following the laws, statutes, and commandments. That's the only way to do it, because even verse 3 even says that now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Well, the word that Yahusha HaMashiach has spoken unto us is keeping the law, statutes, and commandments, which is observing and keeping and doing the Shabbat, which is resting on the seventh day of rest. Not only that, but also following the dietary laws that are highlighted and spoken of in Leviticus or Vayikra chapter 11, as well as Deuteronomy and Devarim chapter 14. And I've even done a video on that in Torah Truth. If you would like to check more of that out in that playlist, I will definitely link it below so you can see it. But that's not all. Also observing the feast days that are spoken of in Leviticus or Vayikra chapter 23, which also includes Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, trumpets, atonement, and tabernacles, and there are many more commandments. It doesn't just stop there. It doesn't just stop at the 10 commandments. But why this is so important and why this verse is so important is because when it says clean through the word which I have spoken unto you, well, when you look at the Old Testament and the original covenant, especially when you look at the first 5 books of scripture, which is where you will find the law, statutes, and commandments, you even see how our Father is putting a difference between clean and unclean, set apart and unset apart, as well as righteous and unrighteous. So when you're following the word of our Father and you're following the words that the Messiah, Yahusha, is instructing, which is to follow the law, statutes, and commandments, well, then you know you are clean through that word, and you know that you're putting a difference between clean and unclean, just like the Father puts a difference between clean and unclean, because we know that our Father is in fact clean. And so when you put a difference between clean and unclean, that is when you start to abide in the Messiah, Yahusha. And when you accept the true Messiah, Yahusha, as your Passover lamb, that is how you are abiding in him and he in you as well. And that is how you will be able to bear fruit, because that is how the branch can bear fruit. But you cannot do that if you're following after traditions of man. You cannot do that if you're following after the traditions of religion and going to church on Sunday and breaking commandments. You cannot do that. You cannot bear fruit when this is talking about, and that's what this parable is alluding to in Yahuchanan or John 15, because when you start to follow the law, statutes, and commandments, and when you put Torah first, and when you put our Father Yahuwah first and his true son Yahusha into your heart, that is how the Father can be esteemed, and that is where you can bear much fruit, as it talks about in verses 8 as well. And see, the problem with religion, especially Christianity, is that there is too much emphasis on love. Yes, you heard me. There is too much emphasis on love and forgiveness, and they start to miss the point and the whole idea of what our Father Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha, what they're really talking about. Because, yes, although it is about love and forgiveness, and although that is important, however, you all need to understand the context of what they're talking about. Because even verses 9 through 10, the Messiah, Yahusha, he even tells you what he's talking about. Because it even says, as the Father hath loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love. If you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. Well, if you're not keeping his commandments, or if you continue to say that the law was done away with, as Christianity tells you, as your pimping pastor tells you, as the church tells you, well then guess what? You're not abiding in his love, and the Messiah himself even says that. And it's time we see the importance of this and stop making excuses and be deceived no more, because this is some real serious stuff. And for those of you who still want to say that the law is done away with, I honestly don't know what to tell you, because even the Messiah himself says to keep the commandments. Which commandments is he talking about? Because newsflash, during the time of the Messiah Yahusha, there was no New Testament written yet. So what commandments is he talking about? What commandments is he getting it from? He's getting it from the Torah. He's getting it from the first 5 books of scripture, what you commonly know as Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That is exactly where he is getting all of that from, and I hope you see that with both your eyes open. Because there's just too much deception going on out there, and there are too many false doctrines out there that are telling you that, oh, well, we can love the Messiah and the Messiah knows our heart. We can love him by calling him whatever we want to. Oh, we can love our Father because our Father knows our hearts, and that's why we can call him anything that we want to, and it's okay. We don't have to follow the law because the law was done away with, and our Father understands if we don't follow the law because we can't keep it, and that's okay because our Father loves us and our Messiah loves us, and so he's going to forgive us even if we're not following his word. Do you really think that's the truth? Do you really think that our Father's okay with that? And do you really think that the Messiah himself is okay with that doctrine? The answer to that question is no, and you all need to see how important this is when it comes to salvation, because Yahuwah is salvation. In fact, that is what the name of the real Messiah, Yahusha, means, that Yahuwah is salvation. Yahuwah saves, but in order to attain that salvation, he that endures to the end shall be saved. But in order to endure, you have to be following the law, statutes, and commandments. And if you keep saying that it's done away with, you are blaspheming the word of our Father. And I hope you're seeing that with both your eyes open. Because yes, it is about love, but it's also about doing the will and work of our Father and being obedient to the word of our Father. Because remember, obedience is much better than sacrifice, and that is exactly what this chapter is about. That is what John 15, Yahuchanan 15, is talking about. So when it's talking about love, and when it's talking about loving one another, it's talking about loving those who keep and follow the word of our Father, who are keeping the law, statutes, and commandments, and who are guarding the Torah to their heart. Do you have to be Jewish to do this? No, you do not have to be Jewish, and no, you do not just have to be so-called black or so-called African American, the real biblical Israelites, by the way. It does not matter your race, it does not matter your creed, it does not matter your color, it does not matter if you're white, black, brown, blue, green, yellow, red, pink, whatever color you are. All that matters is if you're doing the will and work of the Father, and you're learning and starting to follow his law, statutes, and commandments, but not just hearers of the word, but also doers as well. And also for so-called Gentiles or Goyim, they must be grafted into Yashraal through Yahusha if they want to be part of Yashraal and considered part of Yashraal. And Rumaim, or Romans chapter 11, talks more about this specifically in verse 17. And we as in Yashraal also have to be regrafted in through the Messiah too if we want to be saved. But we also see that the Messiah once again tells us that if we love him, to keep his commandments. Yahusha even talks about it in John, or Yahuchanan chapter 14, the chapter before the true vine and branches parable. And we see it as well in verses 15. It says, if you love me, keep my commandments. So if we love the Mashiach, or the Messiah, Yahusha, we are to keep his commandments. Which commandments do you think he's talking about? And this is so important, and this is why the law itself matters, because how can you be friends of the Messiah if you don't even know what the Messiah is really talking about and preaching on and teaching upon? We've all been brainwashed by religion, specifically Christianity, but now is the time to see the truth for what it really is. And my hope today is that you are seeing it and that you are starting to see just what the Messiah, Yahusha, is really talking about. Because now we're in Matthew or Matthew chapter 12, and we're going to be reading from verses 46 through 50 together, so you can see exactly whom Yahushua HaMashiach calls and considers his true family. Because we're here in verses 46, and it even says, while he yet talked to the people, behold, his mother and his brethren stood without, or stood outside, desiring to speak with him. Then one said unto him, behold, thy mother and thy brethren stand without, or they stand outside, desiring to speak with thee. But he, as in Yahushua, answered and said unto them that told him, who is my mother and who are my brethren? So he even asks them, who is my mother and who are my brethren? And he, as in Yahusha, stretched forth his hand towards his Talmidim, or disciples, and said, behold, my mother and my brethren, for whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in Shamayim, or heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother. Well, what is the will of the Father? Let's find out. Because Yahusha even tells us what the will of the Father is, because we're here in Matthew or Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to be reading from verses 17 through 20, so you can see that the Messiah himself even tells you that the law is not done away with, because we're here in verses 17, and it says, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Did you hear that? I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. The Messiah, Yahusha, did not come to destroy and do away with the law, but rather to fulfill the law. And he even says that himself with scripture itself to prove it. So I don't know what your Christian churches and pastors are talking about when they tell you that the law is done away with, even though the Messiah himself says otherwise. But let's keep going. It says, for verily I say unto you, till Shamayim, or heaven, and Aratz, earth, pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. Well, heaven and earth are still here, so therefore all has yet to be fulfilled, so therefore the law is still in effect. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments, and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of Shamayim, or heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of Shamayim, or heaven. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, or those who teach and preach about tradition, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven and Shamayim. Because what were the scribes and Pharisees doing? They were following their own traditions and their own laws, none of which were none effect according to scripture itself, and they were breaking the Torah and transgressing against the law, which is what sin means, by the way, because when you look up the word sin, it simply means transgression of the law. Well, which law is it talking about? And Yahuwah knows I cannot emphasize this enough. I cannot stress this enough, how important names are and how important names are to our Father, because what you're going to see is that even the King James Version transgresses against our Father and breaks commandments. And you're going to see exactly how the King James Version itself does this. The question is, are you doing this too? Because we're here in Shamut, or Exodus chapter 20, and we're going to be reading from verses 1 through 11, commonly known as the Ten Commandments. We're just going to be reading the very first 4 commandments so you can get a better idea and picture of everything, and so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about, because it even says, and Elohim, another way to pronounce Elohim is Allahim, spake all these words, saying, I am Yahuwah thy Allahim, which have brought thee out of the land of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt have no other Allahim before me. Did you hear that? That is the very first commandment. But let's keep going. Verse 4. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in Shamayim, or heaven above, or that is in the earth, or Rats beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahuwah thy Allahim, am a jealous all, visiting the the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Wow, wasn't the Messiah Yahusha talking about those who hate not only him and the Father as well? Let's keep going. Verse 6, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Wow, wasn't just the Messiah Yahusha in John chapter 15? Didn't he talk about love too, and for love and abiding in them that keep his commandments? Let's keep going. Verse 7, thou shalt not take the name of Yahuwah thy Elohim in vain. For Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Shabbat, or the Sabbath day of rest, to keep it set apart. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but in the seventh day is the Sabbath, or Shabbat, of Yahuwah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yahuwah made Shamayim, or heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Yahuwah Baruch, or blessed the seventh day, or Shabbat, and hallowed it, or made it set apart. So you may be wondering then, how does the King James Version and many other versions and translations and watered down translations, how are they breaking the commandments? You're probably wondering this. Well, let's go over the commandments and see, because the first one we know is thou shalt have no other gods before Yahuwah. Well, putting Jesus Christ over our Father is having other gods before him, not just Jesus, but also Buddha and Krishna and all those other ones. That breaks the first commandment. So yes, when you put JC over our Father, that breaks the first commandment. But let's keep going. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images. So no graven images is the second commandment. And by the way, this commandment right here is the commandment that the Roman Catholic Church took out and removed from their Bibles. You're not going to find this commandment in the Catholic Church. I wonder why that's the case, because when you have all those images of Mary and those statues of Jesus and those pictures of them in your house, you are breaking the second commandment, not to mention pictures of Buddha and Krishna and all those other false idols. That you're breaking commandments when you do that, and especially if you bow yourself down to them when you go to church on Sunday. And then there's also the third commandment, which says thou shalt not take the name of Yahuwah thy Elohim in vain. So when you're using words like Lord and God, you are actually breaking the third commandment, and you don't even know it. Why? Because the name of our Father is Yahuwah. And if you read in Acts chapter 4 verses 12, it even tells you that only by one name can you be saved, and whosoever shall call upon the name of our Father shall be saved. Well, when you look at Lord and God are titles, they are not names, and our Father does not appreciate being called those titles. And this is why this is so important, because he even says, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. So whether you know it or not, it's no excuse whatsoever. So when you go to church and when you're worshiping Lord and God, you better know who you're worshiping and who you're calling upon, because when you look up the word Lord in the Hebrew, it means Baal, it means Baal. So you're calling on a pagan title of Baal, which our Father instructs us and tells us not to do. And even in Yirmiyahu, or Jeremiah chapter 23 verses 27, it even tells us that they even cause people to forget his name for the pagan titles of Baal. We even see that Lord is one of them. Wow, thousands and thousands of years later, and nothing has changed. Nothing new is under the sun. And you're probably wondering, well, what's wrong with G-O-D? Well, G-O-D is a title. It is not the name of our Father whom created heaven and earth. And when you look up G-O-D and when you do more research on it, you'll see that it's actually a pagan Canaanite deity. Yes, that is correct. God is a pagan Canaanite deity, but you're probably wondering, Lord and God are in the KJV, so surely it must be correct. Surely it has to be the names of our fathers, and I'm trying to tell you, do not be deceived, because it would only make sense that if scripture, original scripture, was written in Hebrew, that our Father would have a Hebrew name along with the prophets, along with the Messiah, Yahusha. And if you look up the names of the prophets in the Hebrew, you start to see that they have Yah and Yahu in their names. They have the Father in their names, just like Yahusha, our Messiah, which even means Yah is salvation, Yahuwah saves. That's what the name of our Messiah means. But Lord and God are not the case. They don't even have that. And the Messiah himself in John or Yahukanan chapter 5 verses 43 even says that he comes in his Father's name, but you receive him not. But if another comes in his own name, him you will receive, which is talking, of course, about JC, which is plastered all over the place as we see courtesy religion. Because they don't want you to know who your Father is. They don't want you to know who your Creator is. That is why the Zionists and the Masoretes and all those other ones at the very top, that is why they removed and took out the Hebrew name of our Father Yahuwah and Yahusha, as well as all of the Hebrew, and they replaced it with pagan titles such as this. And that is exactly what you see, adding and taking away from Scripture, just like the Roman Catholic Church took away the second commandment and added another one, adding and taking away from Scripture, breaking more commandments. And then, of course, we know the fourth one is to remember the Shabbat, or the Sabbath day of rest, to keep it set apart. Well, when you go to church on Sunday, and when you say that Sunday is the Sabbath and not the actual Shabbat, or the day of rest, when you observe Sunday as the day of rest, you are breaking even more commandments, so to speak. And this is why the language is so important. This is why the Hebrew is so important. This is why names are so important. And if you would like to learn more about this, I highly recommend you check out my playlist, Torah Truth, as well as Be Deceived No More, so you can be deceived no more. But if you're ready to follow truth, if you're looking to even seek more truth, and if you're looking for scriptures that can help you with the Hebrew, as well as get immersed with the Hebrew names of our Father Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha, and if you're looking to get away from those watered down translations, then I highly recommend the Sefer, because what the Sefer is that it's a comprehensive restoration of sacred scripture that's written in the English language. Now, what's good about this version is that not only does it set forth a transliteration rather than a substitution of the names of our Father Yahuwah and his true son, the Messiah, Yahusha, and the Ruach HaKadosh, which is the set-apart spirit, but it even restores the Aleph Tav 9,837 times. It even includes all of the 81 books that were previously canonized as scripture, including books such as Enoch and Jubilees and many others. It even includes an accurate order, transliterates over 3,100 Hebrew names without substitution, and it even includes a Hebrew to English chart of the most common names and places found in Scripture, not to mention a chart of the modern and Paleo-Hebrew alphabet that provides the meaning of each letter, as well as many other maps and charts and diagrams that can help you out on your spiritual walk and journey as you continue to journey into truth and get away from the lies of religion that are out there. Now, although it is on the pricey side, if you put in the coupon code Truth Unveiled, so if you just type in the coupon code Truth Unveiled without the 777, you will receive 10% off your purchase. And again, that coupon code is Truth Unveiled. I will leave all of the helpful information in the description box below to help you on your journey into truth. Now, if you're also looking for more Hebrew resources, including the Hebrew alphabet, as well as many other resources that include the Dead Sea Scrolls and many other resources, then I highly recommend Hebrew Foundation, and I'm going to leave all of the helpful links below to help you on your spiritual walk and journey into truth. But hopefully this has been helpful unto you. This is Truth Unveiled here, saying as always, peace, love, and shalom.